just one quick follow-up.
Please.
It's fine for the United States or for the Obama administration to say we will not support this attack. On the other hand, if the Israelis
I didn't say it was fine.
Well, no, it's fine. They can say that and they can make that statement.
Yeah.
If the Israelis see their security under threat and they make the attack, is the Obama administration or is it credible for the United States to come out and say, look, we told you not to attack. Sorry. I mean, it's not going to fly. It doesn't really matter what he says because the facts will be determined in large part by players in which we don't have absolute control on. I'm not saying we don't have heavy influence on Israel, and I'm also not saying that the Israelis might not make the attack and say to us, look, these things in Natan are buried. They're not like the facility in Iraq or in Syria, which were above ground and easier to destroy. They might say, we've made the initial attack. You are now either committed to let them, because they're going to blame you anyway, per their already stated policy is that if we attack, they're going to assume that you allowed us to do it and blame us anyway. What are you going to do? I mean, do you let them have half a facility, or do you go and finish the job? I confess that these are very, very difficult issues, but it's not unlikely that you as a member of the Senate might be confronted with just such a thing. So it's not meant to put it on the spot, but I mean, this is life and death for us. I lived in New York City. 20 people that I worked with over the course of 6 months were killed in the trade center, so it hits close to home.
Anybody in the room lose somebody? It's something that we especially are aware about here in Connecticut, as they are in New York City and in New Jersey. Getting back to one of your points, what do we do? You recall a few years ago, Israel was being hit on a regular basis out of Lebanon and decided to go into Lebanon, and at some point the United States government said, look, we understand you've gone into Lebanon to try to root out these Hezbollah and other terrorist groups that are engaging in operations in the northern part of Israel, but we only want you to go so far, and we don't want you to stay more than a certain period of time. What was Israel's response to that?
Yeah.
They went further and they stayed longer.
Yep.
Now, I don't say that to necessarily to be critical, but to simply point out that sovereign states have a responsibility to protect their citizens first and foremost, and sovereign states make these judgments. We make these judgments, Israel makes these judgments, others make these judgments. And it's hard to control that. What you try to do is influence that. I spent 37 years in the U.S. Army. 37 years, 7 months, 24 days to be exact. I spent 4 years in a war zone. That's not anything that I would wish on my son, or my daughter, or my neighbor, or my neighbor's son, or this fine young man that I just met earlier today who served us in the Navy. Thank you for that service. Look, he's young. I mean, he's smart. He's an engineer. He could be doing anything, but he went and joined the Navy. And God bless him for that. But, you know, war is the ugliest thing you're ever going to see. And as Americans, you know, sometimes it comes to us, and sometimes we have to, you know, get involved. But I would argue that with Israel, with Iran, with other countries in the Middle East, negotiation, economic embargoes, any of a variety of forceful actions without actually taking force are what we would like to do first, but we can't afford to be weak or naive. That if we're bowing and scraping, we look like we're bowing and scraping, and that actually can encourage violence against us and against others. So it's a very delicate thing. I think that the Congress of the United States of America, the U.S. Senate, has to be strong in their policy, and they have to sustain a strong presidency in these policies. And I would suggest that over the last year or so, we probably could have done better. Probably could have done better.
Thank you.
Enough said.
I'd like to ask Gwen Suzio in the back of the room from the Family Institute, among other groups, and hopefully a candidate for the State Senate from Meriden, if with a little encouragement.
First of all, a dyed-in-the-wool, straight-down-the-line conservative. Whatever the issue is, you pretty much can say he's conservative, fiscal or social. And it's easy and fashionable to be a fiscal conservative today, but I want to talk to you about what is a much more controversial area, the social issues, basically. And in particular, I'd like to focus on the abortion issue, if I might. Basically, a lot of us can have difference of opinions about the abortion issue in the room. However, most Americans, I think, are united in a few things. One is most of us don't want to pay for someone else's abortion. There's a practice called partial birth abortion, where it's legal, where basically a baby in the process of being born can be killed by the abortionist. And you've got a record of supporting funding of abortion, and you voted against the partial birth abortion ban when you were in Congress. Can you explain your votes, and have you changed your mind, and if so, why? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm a fiscal conservative because it's your money. I'm a social moderate because it's your life. And I believe that individuals, free people, need to exercise personal responsibility for things that most directly affect their lives. So I am pro-choice. Does that mean I don't respect others of a different point of view? Absolutely not. I have great respect on this issue. It's not an easy issue. For many families, it can be a personal tragedy. Personal tragedy. So it's a tough, tough issue. On the issue of funding abortions, what I will do is I will go back and pull the records, but I would argue that most of the bills that I supported do not allow federal funding for abortion. That in some instances, there may be a piece of legislation like the D.C. Appropriations Bill, for example, that is designed to appropriate funds for the District of Columbia that has many, many, many things in it and may include that kind of a provision. But I would argue that most of the legislation that I've supported over the years does not promote federal funding for abortion, but I will say that with a caveat that I can't be 100% sure, so I will give you a written statement just so that I can be 100% sure. Is that fair enough?
Sure, but could you just clarify philosophically, do you support taxpayer-funded abortions or not?
Philosophically, no. But the argument becomes difficult when I talk about female military personnel assigned abroad, and this has happened more often than you would like to know, who have become pregnant through rape while serving in a war zone. It has been a problem that has come before the Armed Services Committee. And traditionally, they would be reassigned back to the States for medical reasons. And what I do support in that context is a female in the military, on active duty, in a war zone, seeking an abortion through a willing doctor, military doctor, at her own expense. At her own expense.